This is the perfect leather crafting project. It requires no stitching, no wet molding, no hardware, just a flat piece of leather that you can use to showcase and practice your carving skills, whether you're a beginner leather crafter or a master with a swivel knife and stamps. This project is a great way to practice your carving skills while still creating a saleable item for your shop. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, stick around and I'll show you how I make these great looking field notebook covers. Alright, to get started, we got a couple things here. We've got a piece of leather. This is 9/10 ounce. And I think it's about the right size. We just got to make one cut. And we've got our notebook cover here that we're going to use as a pattern. So we're just going to lay that along our piece of leather, take our scratch awl, make a mark, and I'm going to come around and do these rounded corners while I'm doing this. Just mark all of that at the same time. Then we're going to come back and we'll mark these holes for our binder after we cut this. I've got my carpenter square from Harbor Freight. You see it's got sandpaper on the back side of it so it doesn't slide around. I'll line that up to my awl mark. Like I said, it doesn't slide around, so once you put it in place, it stays there. Oh, one thing I want to do, put my cutting board under here. I don't like cutting on a new surface, so I keep my old cutting boards and use those. Keep my new cutting boards fresh if I can. And I sharpened this knife. All right, so that's our piece of leather that we're going to use. It looks pretty good. I'm going to trim these corners. Let me tell you, I did a good job sharpening that knife. That thing is wicked sharp, man. Okay, now we can get rid of our cutting board, get our pattern back, line it up, make sure we're all square. Take our pencil, make sure we're square. Accuracy is your friend. That's my favorite saying. Try to keep things accurate. Then I just go around these little squares and trace their outline. That's that. Now the next thing I want to do is on the back side of this, I'm going to draw a line about, let's go 5/8. somewhere in the neighborhood of 5/8 of an inch. Let's go a 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch will do it. And this is just an area that I'm going to skive so that when we punch for our binder, punch the holes for our binder, the leather's not as thick along that area. And this is the back side. And by the way, this piece of leather that we cut is 6 inches wide, 9 inches tall. So I've got that line drawn. I've got my skiving knife and I'm going to carefully skive trying not to go past my 1/2 inch mark there. And that's the hard part, just skiving a straight line there. And the trick with this skiving knife, to get a good line, is to have a sharp blade. So this is a new blade here. We want to take that down about half its original thickness, I guess. Alright, that doesn't look too bad. Now, we're going to take our $7, $8 punch, leather punch that we got from Harbor Freight. Can't go wrong with this. And we're going to go along. We're using the smallest diameter punch. I think that's an 1/8 inch punch. We're going to go over each square and line up, punch a hole right in the center of the square the best we can. All right, the next thing we want to do is on the back side, we're going to put blue painter's tape along the entire back. And the purpose of this is to keep the leather from stretching when we're doing our stamping. Now, if you're not going to be stamping this, then there's no need to go to this process. But if you're going to do some tooling, this will help keep the leather from stretching. Now, in this case with the 9/10 ounce, it's not going to stretch much, but it might stretch a little. And you could, you don't have to use 9/10 if you want to. You can go a little bit thinner. And 7/8 would work. But this is what I had laying around, so we're going to use the 9/10. And I'm not sure who made this leather. This might be an import. It looks like it's so light. But like I said, it's what I had laying around. I've used this import stuff. I think I got it off like Amazon. And it actually tools pretty well. Can't complain. Turn that up. Man, that knife is sharp. I mean, I got it right. I'll leave a link in the description of how to get this knife. This is a Stanley 199, and it is a great leather crafting knife if you do a little bit of modification and know how to sharpen it. And I'll link a link in the description to a video I made on exactly how I modify this and how I get it sharp. Alright, so our leather's ready to go. The next thing I want to do is prep our pattern, and I've already generated a printed copy from the computer. I drew this out on the computer using a program called Affinity Draw. Now on the back side of this, I'm going to put clear packing tape. Keep it from getting wet, because we're going to have to moisten the leather. Case it. It's called casing the leather. Get it ready for stamping. We don't want our pattern to absorb any water, so I put this tape on the back side of it. I used to tape both sides, the front and the back, but I found tape in the front is really not necessary because it doesn't get subjected to the moisture like the back does. I did good. I didn't get any wrinkles in the tape. That's sometimes a trick. Got a couple bubbles, but they'll work themselves out. Alright. So here's a leather. Here's a pattern. Something along this line. Now, what I'm going to do is tape this all to my carpenter square. See, I got the square where the leather sets up against it. And I put my pattern directly over it. Line it up. And then I'll tape this in place. Slowly but surely, getting this taped in the right place. Okay, now this way I can lift the pattern up as I need to. And if I keep my leather pushed up against the square, everything will stay aligned. Alright, so I've took my piece of leather here over to the sink and hit it with a spray bottle of water to case it to get it ready so that I can transfer this pattern. And to do that, I'm just going to slide my leather, a little something up in there, a little chunk of leather. Slide my leather up in up to the edges of my carpenter square. Then I'm going to take a pencil and start tracing carefully around these lines. Alright, that's our notebook cover with our pattern sketched onto it. Now what I'm going to do next is case this again, put plenty of water on it, and get it ready to do my swivel knife work. Okay, before I start cutting, I'm going to sharpen my swivel knife by running it across my strop a half dozen times or so, and anytime I'm cutting and the knife starts to drag, I'll stop and repeat this process. I'm going to start by cutting my border outline. I do this freehand, but you can use a straight edge if you're more comfortable doing it that way. Once I've finished the borders, I start cutting the floral design. Keep in mind this is not an in-depth tutorial on leather carving and stamping. I've covered a lot of this stuff in other videos, so you should stop and subscribe to the channel and check out my leather craft playlist for more detailed videos on leather tooling. This will also let you know when new videos have been released. Alright, as you can see, I've got all my diagonal lines in one direction. Now I want to go across this way, so I'm going to line up my corner here to my 1-inch mark here. Make my first cut. When you're cutting your diagonal lines for your pattern, you don't want your lines to form a square. You want a diamond shape with two sides being wider than the other two, so that the seashell stamps we're going to be using fit the diamond shape of our pattern. Using the small stamp on the narrow angle and the larger stamp on the wider angle. You set this up by starting in the corner at point A on our diagram and extending your line diagonally down to point B, which is 1 inch in from the border corner. Doing this on both lines will create the diamond pattern you're looking for. This works for this pattern and any other rectangle or square pattern you're working with where you want to create this diamond pleated pattern. Just like that. And I'm going to follow this out just by turn it around this way, make it easier. Line up my 3/4 inch mark on top of my cut, like so. And then make another cut like this. Okay, and I'm going to follow this out 3/4 inch all the way out this way, and I probably got one more here. And when I've got all that done, I'll come back and show you my progress. All right, we've got all our swivel knife work done. And we've drawn our cross diagonal lines for our diamond shaped pleated pattern. And that's what I want to show you now, is how I go about finishing that off. And what I do, I have two Berry King seashell stamps, I think they're called. One's narrow and one's a little bit wider, and we use the wider one on the obtuse angles, and we use the narrow one on the acute angles where the lines cross. So let me start with one of these stamps and my Berry King mallet and show you how this works. So we'll start here in the middle. And I just line that stamp up with the little dot in the center of the intersection. And rather than changing tools, I'll work my way around with this one. So that's our pleated diamond pattern. And the next thing we'll do is go in and start beveling our swivel cuts on our Sheraton design, our floral design. All right, on my next step here, I'm going to take and bevel all the lines that I've cut on my floral design. And to do that, I've got two main bevelers that I use. These are all, there's 5 that I use. These 2 are that I mainly use are Berry Kings. They're all 5 Berry Kings. But I use these 2 for starters. So, use the longest one that you can, depending on how much curve you got. But these 2 ones, when I have these little curves like around the outside of the flowers, I'll use this smaller beveler. I also use, when I'm going around the outside, I have a inside curve and an outside curve. If I can find those. There's an inside curve and an outside curve. I'll use those when I'm going around these outside flowers. I've also got a smaller outside curve that I use. So between those 5 bevelers, and again, they're all Berry Kings, I'll go around and bevel outline this entire swivel cuts of my floral design. And I'll come back and show you what I've done when I've got that completed. All right, here you can see I've got all my floral design beveled and ready for the next step, which is to do my backgrounds. And I got some little backgrounding tools, large, medium, and small. These 2 are what I'll use the most. This is the majority of what the backgrounding will be done with. And then little areas like when I get up, well, I don't see any examples. When I get up really close to the border and stuff, I might use this little one at a different place. But the majority of it's going to be that size bevel there, which is about 3/16 inch by 1/8, maybe something like that. All right, so I'll background this and I'll come back and show you the results. All right, here we are with all our backgrounding done in our floral pattern. The next step I want to do is to work on our flower and our leaves with a pear shader to give that some depth. And I've got 3 different size pear shaders that I use. And again, the medium and the small are typically what I use the most. And occasionally I'll use the larger size, but that's what we're going to do next. So I'll pear shade these leaves and the flowers and come back and show you the results. All right, so I went in and did this pear shading on all the flower petals. I used a center liner off the middle of the flower. What else did we did? Pear shading on all the vines except for these twirls. We're going to come back next and use a veiner and go around the outside of these twirls and add some accents, and I'll show you that next. Okay, I wanted to show you this as I go around the outside of these veins here that are twirled up. I use just the corner of my veiner as I go around and lean it over quite a bit so that I'm just getting the edge of it there. Follow around. And then I'll do the same thing on this one over here. All right, one more thing I want to show you that I failed to record because for some reason you gotta push the record button to get the camera to record. I'll be glad when artificial intelligence gets here where I just have to think about starting to record and the camera will pop on, but we're a ways away from that, and now I just have to depend on my old memory, which is failing me. Anyway, some things that I did, I started putting these accent lines in on all my vine work. Here, these accent lines. I did accent lines on the flower petals, accent lines on my twirl vines, and then I also took a mule's foot, a small mule's foot, and where 2 vines are more intersected, I put some accents in there, some accents right here. Along this vine here, I used a leaf liner to create that pattern. I used a mule's foot along where these 2 vines intersected, and over on the opposite side where these intersected, we used a mule's foot. I think that's all we did that I missed. So once this dries out, we're going to come back and do the corners and do the edges, and then I might show you how I dye this and finish it. So we'll be back. All right, now that our piece of leather is dried, there's a few things I want to do before we can move on to finishing this project. We need to cut the corners to match our notebook cover. Here was the original cover. And what we're going to do is just line this up and mark where the notebook has a rounded corner here, like such. And then I'm going to take an old cutting board, like I usually do, stick it underneath the project, and find my knife and cut these corners. And I do this usually by making about 3 cuts. I don't try to wrap it around in one cut. I make 3 or 4 little cuts like that. Something like that. All right, then I'm going to take an edger. This is a number 3 edger. I'm going to go along my little strop, the corner of my strop. Hope you can see that. Sharpen this up. You can see I'm just using the corner of that block of leather that I've glued together, and I use it. I've got a V in the center, and I can just use one side of the V to get the bottom flat. And I use that also whenever I'm doing my V gouge. But then I do the inside of the edger on this little corner like this a few times, and we should be pretty sharp. Then I'm going to go along this side, the bottom, and the other side. I leave the top square. So let's see how this works. If we got it sharp enough. If it's sharp, you'll get this little spaghetti piece like that. Then I'm holding the edger at about a 45-degree angle, 45 to the edge of the leather. As you can see, we got a pretty sharp tool there. And then I'll come around these rounded corners, tighten that up. Okay, and then the next thing I'll do is take a piece of sandpaper I think this is a 320, and I'll put it on a little sanding block because I want to get these corners nice and rounded. I'll go along the edge with this 320. You got to remember to keep my project in the frame of the camera. There's a whole new dimension to doing this stuff when you're trying to film it. Next, I've got some 400 grit paper and some 600 grit paper. And I'll take some water on a dauber and go around the edge here. I'll wet this edge. And I don't typically, on these notebook covers, I don't do the bottom edge. I just round over the top. I like the cover to set flush with the notebook paper. So once I've got this wet, I take my 400 grit and just go around and sand these edges really well. Try to get it start to burnish the edge and get a smooth edge. And then once I've done the 400 grit, I'll come back with the 600. And I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to go ahead and sand these, and I'll come back when I'm done. You can see what I've accomplished. Okay, I've gone around. I've got all my edges sanded. I went with the 400 grit. Keep adding water. You know, I put a dab of water across there, and then I'll sand it. Same, water, sand, and I'll go from 400 to the 600 grit. until I've got it about like what you see there. Now, you also notice I've got some water stains around the edge. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go and wet this entire thing so those water stains won't show. But before I do that, I want to take a plastic faced mallet, and go around this edge and tap down where I've sanded, because a lot of times it'll kind of raise that edge when I'm sanding, and I like to just go around and tap that down, make it look smoother. And then take my water bottle, go over this with a light coat of water, like such. And I'll let that dry overnight. And then tomorrow, once this is completely dry, I'll take it and oil it with olive oil, and then we'll do any kind of finishing as far as a dye or finishing coat like super sheen. And I'll show you that process. We might even do a special video on how I do my finishing rather than incorporate it into this one, but I'll show you the finished product anyway. So we'll be back. All right, I've taken our notebook cover and I put a couple coats of olive oil on it. I've gone along the edge with a burnishing tool like this. First I put a little saddle soap on the edge, and then I took the burnishing tool and went around and burnished the edge some. Then you can do the same thing, come back across with some glycerin soap, I guess it's called, and a canvas cloth, and hit that edge. You can see it darkening up there. And of course you can come back and dye the edge if you want to. But I think that looks pretty good, just burnishing and hitting it with the canvas. And then the next thing I want to do, we've still got our tape on the back. Once we've got everything finished, we've oiled it, done any dyeing that we might want to do. And I'm going to save the dye process, my whole finishing process, for another video. So at this point, we're ready to remove this tape. And to do it, you got to find the corner where you started and pull back. In order to not create a ruffled grain, pull directly back in a way. Whoop, pretty tough sometimes. See how I'm holding it flat and pulling it back. That'll do the least damage to the I guess it's the flesh side of the leather. Like that. All right. You could take and put some super sheen on this and run over it with a glass slicker if you want to. But the next step is to take, and I'll leave a link in the description of where you can get these field notebooks, steno books, that have the binder on the top. And I get these on Amazon, and I'll leave a link in the description. And I'll show you how to set these up with our new cover. Tell you what, they package everything so well these days. Sometimes this plastic is just murder to get off things. We generate way too much plastic too. Alright, so I haven't found the greatest way to remove these binder clips, but I'll show you what I've been doing. I need a pair of pliers. I had a pair of pliers around here somewhere. So we've got to open up our binder here to get our cover off. I'll just take each prong and pull it up wide enough so I can slide my notebook in. So I open it up about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, maybe, something like that. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. It's not really rocket science. I'm just opening up this binder clip. All right. So then I've got the back off. I'm gonna actually roll it around. Let's bend this up a little bit. You got to kind of wrestle with this thing to get it right. And they're pretty easy to bend, so it's not terrible. Come on out of there, man. I'm one that wants to be a pain in the ass. You can see how I've opened that up about, like I said, about 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to come back and put this on our new cover, punching each of these prongs through the holes, like such. Just go along one by one, working them into the hole. So you got it like this, and then you can spin it around. We'll line up our notebook again. And now all of this is going to go through our notebook. Tell you what, it's been persnickety. I'm having better luck going at it from the other end. Seems like this little clip right here is being a pain in the butt. We're getting there. Slowly but surely. I think my problem is I got some here at the end that I didn't open up enough, and it's causing some problems. Alright, got them through. So what I do once I do that, and that was a struggle on this one, is I'll bring it all the way through. I've got this row flat up against the leather. Just pushing them down. Until there's something like that. Then I can come back with each one and bend it back down towards the hole. This takes a little bit of work. I'm sure I'll get better at it. I haven't done a lot of these, but I'll get better at it as I go. Now, let's see if we can take a screwdriver. Push these down towards the center of the hole. Yeah, if anybody finds an easier way to do this, let me know. But that works for now. So that is our stenographer's field notebook with a leather, stamped, carved leather cover. And you will be talk of the table when you go into the conference room with that one. All right, thanks for watching. And as always, I hope you have a great day.